Okay, right. Okay, just back to the agenda, and first of all, call for the today and to make apologies. Christine.
Yep, thanks, Chair. So I have Councillor Douglas Reid.
Here.
Councillor Jim McMahon.
Here.
Councillor John McFadden. Councillor Elaine Cowan.
Here.
Councillor Maureen Mackay.
Present.
Councillor Ian Linton.
Here.
Councillor Graham Barton.
Here.
Councillor Barry Douglas.
Here.
Councillor Neil Ingram.
Here.
Councillor Claire Maitland.
Here.
Councillor Drew Filson.
Here.
And we have Babs Mowat.
Here.
Alan Vint.
Here.
I have an apology from Interim Teacher Representative Ian Pettigrew and Jackie Livingston.
Here.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Christine. Okay, on to the declarations of interest. I think there might be one or two towards the end. David, what you through?
Thanks, Chair and members. Just to remind us all that obviously the Code of Conduct was revised just recently, and in terms of the revised code, there's a couple of points to note. Firstly, where council appoints members to outside bodies, there is no need to declare that as an interest because it's already a matter of record. That's the first point. I think we have a couple of members though who may have an interest and may be involved with or appointed to outside bodies in relation to item 9 other than through council, and any member who's I think there we have yourself, Councillor Cowan, perhaps in Celebrate Comana, and I think Councillor Douglas in relation to Take a Bow. They weren't council appointments, they need to be declared. Other than that, I'm not aware of any others having regard to the fact, as I said, that council appointments don't need to be declared now, just non-council appointments. I think they're the only two, but if any member, as always, knows any better than that, then if I've missed any, by all means, through you, Chair, Councillor Filson.
Thanks, David. I mean, I'm in Celebrate Kilmarnock and Centre Stage, but I'm there appointed by the council, so therefore we need to declare it. That's okay. Jim.
Myself, the place-based investment fund that's come up mentioned, which I'm a trustee.
Drew.
Yeah, non-financial interest at item 9 as well, honorary member of the Lochdoon Caravan and Camping Park. So I'll just leave for that item.
Okay, Barry first, then Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Just obviously on the basis of what has already been said, I am a member of the Take a Bow board, not a council appointee, so we'll leave for item 9. Thanks.
Ian.
Thanks, Dougie. Similar to Drew, I'm a member of Comores Tennis Club, non-financial interest in it, but to avoid any conflict, I will remove myself for item 9 as well.
I'm also a member of Comores Tennis Club.
Through you, Chair, just to clarify that in terms of the Code of Conduct, the options available now are, it's the 3-stage test. Is there a connection? And then on considering the connection, is the connection in the view of the reasonable person, the objective person, likely to influence your consideration of the matters in front of the cabinet to take decisions on. The other option is, in the interest of transparency and openness, to declare a connection if you form the view it's not of sufficient interest to cause you to withdraw, but it's always each member's own consideration. You know the interest and the nature and extent of that interest better than anyone, but the test is whether the reasonable man, objective, in the street would consider that interest, as you know it, would be likely to influence your thinking at cabinet on the decisions being taken. So that's the test in terms of the Code of Conduct. So if members are declaring an interest, you're required to leave. If you're declaring a connection for purposes of openness and transparency, then you've satisfied yourself it's not sufficient interest, you're required to leave, and it's appropriate to stay and do business. I'm not questioning anyone's judgment because, as I say, you know better than I those interests. But to be clear, if anyone members declaring an interest, you would be withdrawing. And I think, Chair, we just need need to be clear that we'll have a quorum for this item, given the numbers of interest. Apologies. Just have a quorum.
Effectively, what we're saying here that there's only 4 people that have declared some kind of interest, whether that's
And it's not a small item, it seems.
it's only yes. So I mean, you have to make that decision whether it's you know, of, as David says, of such significance.
I suggest we maybe revisit it before we commence that.
Aye, because we could end up in the quota.
It's prompted to take the it's come to take declarations at that point. So if we can deal with this before we start item 9 and allow members time to be clear. But if at the end of the day all members do wish to withdraw and that have spoken, then we would still be quoted and still able to proceed. We can clarify matters before we start that item, Chair.
Okay, right. Fine. Okay, then we'll go to the first of the education items, and that's the devolved school management scheme. And to give us the report on that is Linda, I believe.
Good morning, Chair, and through you. Good morning, members. It's lovely to see you all again following recess, and good morning, colleagues. So, members, the purpose of this report this morning is to set out the devolved school management scheme in line with the 2019 guidelines and to seek your approval to publish. So there's only 2 recommendations in the paper today, colleagues, in that we're seeking approval of the scheme and also to approve its publication as a front-facing piece of documentation. Colleagues, background is covered in sections 3 through 6. In summarising those, we cover the background to devolved school management, the alignment clearly to fair funding, and to support the aims of the National Improvement Framework in achieving equity for all. Clearly, the document cites a lot around about the empowerment of head teachers as senior officers of the council, and that's to deliver the best outcomes clearly for our young people in our schools. Clearly, the aim is for existing best practice to become the norm, and we also note that early years guidance will come at a later stage. That sits separately to this particular documentation. In paragraph 7, members, I would like to highlight there are no operational changes contained in the update to the devolved scheme of management here. So really the key enhancement is around about purpose and value in terms of transparency and accountability and empowerment of head teachers, again, as senior officers of our council. There are, however, a few technical aspects to this that I would like to highlight through para 7. Changes in budget calculation, moving from average salary to actual salary, budgets being grouped together, and clearly the ability to over and underspend that is reflected in risk later in the paper, and also the ability to carry forward, colleagues, as would be expected in the case of a potential underspend. So clearly all of the above provide a greater foundation for head teacher empowerment, but also create the conditions for enhanced support and transition as we move through. Members, in paragraph 8, following COVID, we have reinstated the education groups, and clearly they will provide an opportunity for head teachers to discuss and share practice of a financial nature in relation to both the devolved scheme of management, but also in relation to pupil equity fund, and to consider opportunities for potentially pulling resources and thinking outside the box in terms of how the money is spent, again, with the focus being on the good for our young people. In section 9, colleagues, I would like to point out an error in section 9, which I absolutely do apologise for. Had it been noted sooner, I would have corrected this. So can I just be clear on this? The devolved scheme of management is time locked in terms of a deadline to the Scottish Government, and the trade unions were not issued the actual documentation in June as cited. It did go to head teachers. It did not go to trade union colleagues in June. However, across the course of the summer, it has gone to trade union colleagues. We have received commentary in from trade union colleagues, and we did adapt the document in line with a few issues that they raised. So I apologise for the June reference. That did not take place, and I've written to the trade unions concerned to advise that that was incorrect in the paper. So I hope that error will be accepted by Cabinet today. A mix of circumstances, including the end of term rush, but I would like to just acknowledge the fact that that is incorrect in the paper, and we will adapt that. Section 10 denotes that the document will be published. Clearly, there is a much greater need for increased training across education establishments as a result of this paper, given the increased level of financial accountability that this brings. Minimum training would be once per year as an awareness raising session, using the gentleman to my right in the form of Joe McLaughlin and his team to speak to the head teachers, our AFOs, etc., about the need for good financial stewardship and clearly keeping tabs on the budget in the normal way that we would do, colleagues, through our own governance measures, but also through East Ayrshire Performs. Colleagues, moving into the legal aspect, the devolved scheme of management is, in addition to the scheme of delegation, available to us corporately, and it does indeed reinforce the role of the senior officer as head teacher, as all of our head teachers out there in the field are indeed assigned as senior officers of the council. Colleagues, in section 13 and paragraph 13, apologies, of the paper, there are no HR issues arising from this particular report today, and the appendix will show the EQUIA has been carried out with no further action required. Colleagues, it does feel slightly obtuse to mention that there are no financial implications arising from this report, given that it centres around finance. However, the implications are contained within paragraph 16, which speaks about risk, and that's the risk clearly that we need to acknowledge in terms of ensuring that there's appropriate training and support out there in the field for our head teachers moving into this not particularly new scheme, because clearly the scheme of delegation has already been in place for schools, but ultimately in some of the technical changes that arise through there. And colleagues, there are no net zero implications in paragraph 17. So thank you very much, Chair, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much for the report, Linda. Open up to members now. Any questions or comments, Drew?
Just a comment, Chair, just as localities in place spokesperson, it's great to see the head teachers have been given this extra empowerment with the backup with the financial and Joe's team. So well done.
Thanks, Drew. Anyone else? Maureen?
Thanks very much. And yes, it is a great shame that this didn't get out to the trade unions in June. I think we all would have welcomed having the usual paragraph, which would have stated what the trade union's response was to this paper. But I'm prepared to take on board that this was a genuine mistake in relation to this. I also note that one of the things that you said was that the minimum training would be on once a year. So minimum means that there's the opportunity to be flexible. Again, thank you for some of the links that you've given us. And I note, interestingly, that on one of the links that you've given us in terms of in that first paragraph to the devolved school management, and I know Joel just love this because it's even more work for him. It points out in that link that it's recommended that elected members as decision makers responsible for the local authority corporate budget should also receive a tailored training programme, and again the additional training for parent councils is not required, and that might be viewed as a barrier for parental involvement. I think it's worth just sort of noting that so as that we're clear about wherein the responsibilities lie. And again, I would certainly echo and welcome Drew's point, and that is actually giving our head teachers and underlining the status of them as senior officers of the council, and that their remit is much wider than just the end of their school gates is certainly something that I would applaud, and I think that's a positive thing for us to be acknowledging. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Councillor Mackay, a massive thank you, particularly on the understanding around about the trade union issue, which was really unfortunate at the time, but clearly we have been able to take account of some commentary in there. On the front of the parents, we are actually quite keen, as much as it's not mandated to do so, and I've spoken about this with our non-elected members in the pre-meeting this morning. We think it would be really useful to take our Parent Council Steering Group through the DSM scheme to inform them of what it is, because there is that expectation that our Parent Council chairs will form that strategic alliance with our head teachers and indeed senior officers. So we're going to go a wee bit beyond the scope of the paper and offer an awareness raising session, but also clearly an awareness raising session for elected members is in discussion at the moment via my colleague Maureen McSeveny, who's online at the moment. So we do intend to offer an awareness raising session because like all of these things, the budgets can be quite difficult to reconcile and understand. But given that, you know, many of you as elected members are really well aligned with your parent councils, we think that that's something we would really like to offer. So we're going to be taking that forward. So massive thank you, Councillor Mackay.
Thanks very much, Linda. I think we'd all support that and would take aboard Drew's point and just in general terms of the direction, you know, involving the parent council bodies as much as we can and achieve more awareness where we can. And I think in terms of budgets, now more than ever, ourselves as well, elected members, including that process as well. Any other comments? No, can we agree the paper? Okay, thank you. And now going to item 3, which is the interim amendment to Standard Circular 61, the capacity of secondary schools. Linda again.
Through you, Chair, this one will be presented by Aileen Hollywood, who's online.
I'm actually here, Linda.
Who's actually here?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. So the purpose of the report is to make an interim amendment to Standard Circular 61, the capacity of secondary schools. This was a recommendation of Cabinet and it's referred to at paragraph 1. Secondary head teachers and the Chief Educational Officer have provided advice, guidance and feedback on this proposal. So the background to and the reasons for the proposed minor amendment are outlined. This includes reference to the fact that we're still waiting for national guidance in relation to calculating secondary school capacities along similar lines to that produced for primary schools in 2014. This will also bring our reporting into line with other local authorities who have already made a change. So the proposal is outlined from paragraph 8 onwards. Unlike primary schools, secondary schools can't operate with every seat occupied in every classroom because of the range of curricular choices pupils make. So adjustments have to be made to reduce the functional capacity to give a resulting number of usable spaces. And usable spaces is the term that we use to report capacity in our school estate management plan. In the absence of national guidance for our secondary schools, we have continued to use a formula published in the days of Strathclyde Regional Council, which does mean that we're reporting slightly higher occupancy levels than similar school buildings in other local authorities that have already made that change. The Strathclyde formula was developed and published long before schools were designed to include, in addition to the formal classrooms, a wide range of flexible spaces used for timetabled learning and teaching. And not taking full account of these spaces means that we're already reporting to the Scottish Government capacities in our newer secondary schools that are close to or over 100%. There's no direct impact of this change on our schools, as senior leaders will continue to manage pupil numbers and determine the number of teaching and practical sections in each year group based on primary catchment children, curricular options, staffing and accommodation, as well as placing requests. So I think it's important not to look at the occupancy figures in isolation, but to consider alongside the fuller detailed information and mitigations that are provided in our annual school estate management plan. So as mentioned in paragraph 16, this slight change to Standard Circular 61 is taking a very cautious and measured approach for the time being, with a further review considered once national guidance is published. However, it is expected that national guidance will be along the similar lines to the proposal on the table today. So the recommendations are outlined basically to make this interim amendment and also to monitor the impact of the amendment and obviously to consider the national guidance when that is forthcoming. Thank you and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks very much, Aileen. Yeah, I think it's high time we updated our guidance from old Strathclyde region days. I think this is to be welcome. Members, any questions or comments? No, okay, can we agree the recommendations in page 34 then? That's the items of the education representatives. I'd like to thank them for their presence today. Okay, now going to item 4, which is the authority to extend Utility Bureau service arrangements with Inspired Energy PLC, and is it Andrew heading up the back as well? Present this paper.
Thanks, Chair. I'll just do a wee brief introduction, then I'm going to hand it over to Magnus Dowie, who's online to present the paper. This is hopefully a fairly straightforward request in terms of the ask in the paper. However, obviously, it clearly has a massive issue just now in terms of energy costs and also to help support our ongoing climate change ambitions. So I'll just hand it over to Magnus, who'll take us through the paper. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Chair. The paper seeks authority from Cabinet to extend the Council's ongoing Utility Bureau service arrangements with Inspired Energy PLC for a further period of 5 years. Inspired PLC, formerly known as STC Energy, have provided the Council's Utility Bureau service since March 2008, and in June 2019, Cabinet approved the negotiated appointment of Inspired for a 3-year contract period. That concluded in July 2022. Inspired Energy and the Council have built a robust utility management solution that corrects billing errors, monitors data consumption, and makes available accurate, complete and meaningful data for energy management, climate change reporting and corporate KPI purposes. Over the 14-year term, we can demonstrate £2.25 million in respect of correction and validation of billing charges. And over the last 3-year term, a further 159,000 of correction recoveries were achieved. It's proposed that the successful Bureau service is continued with Inspired, and negotiations have taken place, resulting in an offer of with optional discounts of 5 or 10%, which are offered for 3 or 5 year contract terms. If the 5-year term was chosen, then annual costs would be £26,955 per annum. This compares with the annual cost of £29,950 per annum over the previous term, so that's the additional saving if we choose the longer term option. By way of benchmarking, APSI Energy, which the Council retains a corporate membership of, offers a similar Bureau service to its members, and it charges £450 per month per metre point, which would translate to around £54,540 per annum. So it's felt that the offer is a very advantageous one for the Council. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Magnus. Thanks, Andrew. I'll just open up now to comments or questions. Graham.
Thanks, Chair. As this paper states, Inspired Energy not only check and validate the Council's energy consumption and charges, it produces an annual consumption and CO2 dataset report. This report is vital in monitoring our carbon footprint and progress towards net zero. Can we explore extending this contract through to 2030 to align with our 2030 net zero target date? This will ensure we maintain the same comparable data set throughout and perhaps locking in an extended annual discount.
Thanks, Graham. Who's got David?
Thanks, Chair. Through you, Councillor Barton kindly mentioned this just before the meeting, so always appreciate a bit of thinking time. The bottom line is there's no harm in asking. Obviously, we've had negotiations. I wasn't directly involved in those negotiations. The output is recorded in the report. There was a 3-year offer and a 5-year offer on the table. That doesn't necessarily exclude the possibility of a longer term, but members will be as aware as I am that of what considerations there are there in terms of the longer the contract, the more you're tied into price, which can be a good thing for us, maybe not a good thing for the supplier. So in essence, there is nothing to stop the council opening up that discussion with the supplier and exploring whether or not there is a willingness to offer a longer contract and how that would compare in commercial terms. As I say, the main impediment might be they're not able to guarantee a price for the length we might like, and there may be other ways to deal with that. So I would suggest if Cabinet felt there was merit, and why wouldn't you, in the point that's been made, then if Cabinet were minded to approve the recommendations, then we would have the authority to conclude at least what we know is on the table and is there to be agreed, but with an additional recommendation or requirement that Andrew or myself or both have that further discussion with the supplier first to establish whether or not a longer contract would be acceptable in similar terms, and to build into the authority that if it is, then you can either authorise us now on that scenario to accept the longer term or ask us to bring it back for approval. But what I wouldn't want to do, if it's the same terms or not much dearer for a longer period, then it doesn't necessarily need to come back for that. But in principle, if we are being asked as officers to have that conversation with the supplier, I don't see any difficulty with that. They can only say no. They can only say that's the offer at the moment. There isn't the option to extend, but there's no harm in asking, as I said.
There's a bit of logic to that. I think, you know, if we could add that to recommendations, if folk are that way minded, that'd be maybe worthwhile exploring. Any other comments or questions? No. Okay. If you maybe splice that onto the recommendations, David, just generally report back to Cabinet now.
So that'll be the first one. That'll be the first thing we have to do, is go and have those discussions, failing which conclude on the terms that are available, and if need be, we'll report back.
Thanks, David. Okay, so agreed with those, that minor change. Okay. Now going to item 5, which is extension of the East Ayrshire Alcohol and Drug Partnership contract. We are with you, Craig.
Thanks, Chair, and good morning, members. First of all, apologies from Joe, Head of Wellbeing Recovery. Had hoped to come and present the paper herself this morning, but unfortunately you got me instead. So the purpose of the report is to seek Cabinet approval to continue the contractual arrangements for the East Ayrshire Alcohol and Drug Partnership Adult Service Contract for a further period. It will take it up to 11th of October 2023, this being in accordance with the Council standing orders relating to contracts. So the IJB previously considered this proposal at its meeting on the 22nd of June and approved the request to continue the funding of this current arrangement with We Are With You, who used to be called Add Action for the avoidance of doubt, and then the direction coming to the Council to actually put that contract arrangement in place. There was good debate and discussion at the IJB in terms of the service delivery, and then agreement that we would take this forward. So the recommendations are noted at paragraph 3, essentially to agree the extension for the contract and to receive the direction from the IJB to put it in place, and otherwise to note the contents of the report. As I say, the main detail of this was discussed in detail at the IJB, so I won't go through it all again. Maybe just worth noting that members might want to note that We Are With You doesn't sit in isolation in terms of alcohol and drug type services within the overall mission. And indeed within the EDP strategic plan through to 2024. It's very much part of the recovery oriented system of care outlined at paragraph 11. In the new recovery hub that's also mentioned there, which is having a soft opening this week, and I'm sure they would make you most welcome if you wanted to go and see it. The new facility on John Finnis Street, ahead of the actual opening for business in the coming week. Probably worth just noting the service centre that's final plus 1 year extension on the 12th of October 2021, which is obviously due to run out at as we head into October this year. Current contract value is £282,000 per annum, and an extension of an additional 1 year to take it to 11th October 2023 would allow us that bit of time to complete a strategic commission review to assess the alignment of this provision, this particular service, with our overall vision for future service delivery, very much tied into what we're now talking about in terms of collaborative commissioning and seeing how we can actually work together across the whole of the third sector to deliver effective services going forward. As I say, Chair, this has already been approved by the IJB, so this is simply the process to actually get the contract awarded, because the IJB doesn't enter into contracts, as you know. That has to be done through either the Council or the NHS Board. So this is seeking approval to award the contract in line with that IJB decision. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Craig. Just maybe open up now for any questions or comments. Maureen?
Thanks very much, Craig. And yeah, I think this is something that's positive. And I think, as you've described, the issue is that the landscape has significantly changed since initially we had a contract with Ad Action in place. And I think what having this extension for 1 year gives us is the opportunity to look and see what is really the best overall, as you've described, a whole horizon of services that meet the needs of people across East Ayrshire. So I'm certainly happy on the basis that it's that 1 year that's been asked for to look at that, and then it'll be the job within the IJB to then really ensure that what we have is we have something that meets the needs across the piece. Positive, thank you.
Thanks very much, Maureen. Yeah, and I think we're looking forward to the soft opening of the recovery hub. It certainly looks really nice, bright and shiny from the outside. It's what it's doing within the four walls. That'll be really important, and how we can best coordinate our recovery services to the public. This given this year within that helps us within that process, because we know there is a competitive market out there in terms of there's a number of people doing very different things, and we've just got to get it collectively right, because there's so much to do in that area. Any other comments or questions, Jim?
Thanks, Chairman. Just to echo these sentiments that you've said, and also Councillor Mackay, we certainly welcome the extension to this. I've been down to the recovery hub. It's not just bright on the outside, it's bright on the inside as well. And I've been encouraged all our members this week to go and meet Steph and Jeff. You'll be made most welcome as you get in. It's a really nice space.
Good. That's great. So, any other comments? Drew?
Just as chair of the licensing board, I'd like to go down and meet the couple as well. It'd be quite good to see the place. Okay, I'll make sure I do that.
Right. Thanks, Drew. Yeah, you and I are that busy, Drew. That's but no, but since we're looking forward to get down there later on in the week just to see what was happening. Yeah, it's very encouraging. Okay, thanks. Can we agree on recommendations? Okay. Next item is the request for extension of contract for Housing Support Service Blue Triangle Housing Association Limited. Blair, you're going to kick this off.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. Yeah, I'm pleased to welcome Lisa Punton to Cabinet this morning to take us through the paper in front of you with regards to Blue Triangle Housing Association's contract arrangements, with a view to looking to continue our contract arrangements. So I'll pass you over to Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Blair. Thanks, Chair. Good morning, members and colleagues. The purpose of this report is to seek Cabinet approval to extend the contractual agreement with Blue Triangle Housing Association Limited, provision of housing support services to 16 to 25-year-olds experiencing homelessness for a period of up to 18 months to the 31st of March 2024. The recommendations are set out at paragraph 2 of the report, and members are being asked to approve the extension in line with the Council's standing orders relating to contracts, and otherwise note the contents of the report. Paragraph 3 sets out the background and reason for the extension request, which is to ensure business continuity for vulnerable service users, to support housing services, to carry out a review and consultation of all housing support services delivered internally and externally in line with Year 4 of the Council's Rapid Rehousing Transition Plan. Paragraphs 4 to 6 talks about the Rapidry Housing Transition Plan. Paragraph 7 to 10 assessment of which authorities in accordance with the 1987 and 2010 Housing Scotland Acts. Furthermore, that the workforce is regulated by the Scottish Social Services Council and subject to an inspection regime by the Care Inspectorate as a health and social care provider. It also sets out the current delivery of housing support by internal and external providers, the contractual arrangements, as well as the significant role housing support plays in the prevention and alleviation of homelessness and tenancy sustainment. Paragraphs 13 to 17 discuss Blue Triangle Housing Association, some background in the organisation, the needs of young people using the service, as well as the existing contractual arrangements and spend. BTHA also deliver the Council's Housing First model, a further action from the Rapidry Housing Transition Plan, and the extension supports the continued delivery of this service. Paragraphs 18 to 21 discuss the Housing Support Review and Consultation, including the aims, timescale and spend associated with the exercise. Implications are set out at paragraphs 22 to 29, and I would draw members' attention to the legal and risk implications associated with the delivery of housing support services. The annual cost of delivery of the housing support services contract is £143,190 to be met from within existing budgets. Finally, in conclusion, an extension of the contract facilitates the ability to undertake a review and consultation of housing support services without adversely impacting on business continuity and people using this service. Thank you, Chair. That report to take any questions.
Thanks, Lisa. There's a wee bit of bad line there, but I think we got most of that. If there's anything you want to ask us to repeat, we'll ask Lisa, but I think we caught most of that. Any comments or questions? Claire?
Just a quick comment at paragraph 18. I'm delighted to see that they're commissioning an external provider to carry out review and consultation of internally and externally provided housing support services. There's no standing still as far as this is concerned, and I thoroughly agree with this paper. Thank you.
It's Claire. Anyone else? Okay, can we agree the paper? Okay, thanks very much, everyone. And next one is item 7, the community asset transfer. Page 56, and Craig is going to take us through that.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. The purpose of this paper is to make a recommendation to Cabinet in terms of the future of the John Fulton Hall Fenwick under the Community Asset Transfer Framework. Cabinet is requested to approve a management arrangement for the John Fulton Hall to Fenwick Community Initiatives up to the 31st October 2024. The background of the paper is in paragraphs 3 through 5. Cabinet initially approved an asset transfer of the John Fulton Hall to Ayrshire Community Enterprise on the 9th of September 2015. The charity ran the facility well over the period. However, during COVID, the organisation decided to utilise the 5-year break period within the lease and return the property to East Ayrshire Council. John Fulton Hall is a valued asset within the community, so Vibrant Communities have been working with the Fenwick Community Action Plan Group to constitute as a charity and provide a business case which will see the facility sustainable for the long term. The challenge for the business plan is the relocation of the nursery into the school campus. Previously, the nursery was an anchor organisation for ACE, bringing a significant income over the period. Given this challenging financial position, it is recommended to give Fenwick Community Initiatives a 2-year management arrangement, which will allow the charity to explore the business case and submit a further application by April 2024 to lease the building. The management arrangement should have the provision for East Ayrshire Council to reclaim 50% of let income generated over the period. The legal implications are indicated in paragraphs 13 and 14. There is a cost associated with this paper of approximately £34,000 over the 2-year period. It is proposed this will be met by Vibrant Communities through existing budgets. The policy and planning implications are 16 through 17. There are no implications in terms of quality impact assessment, human resources or net zero implications. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Craig. John?
I was just wondering, obviously these figures were all pulled together over the last, wee while. Will the £34,000 over the 2 years actually be enough? Because the increase in electricity and, gas and everything is dramatic. And having previously been involved in running the hall, that's a major component in the costs. I mean, will that work with the proposed increases in power costs?
Through you, Chair. Very good point, Councillor. The most recent figures suggest that it should be around about 34,000 over the period. I think the approximate element in there maybe cover slightly. However, if this figure changes, we'll come back to Cabinet and potentially give an update and request some further funding if that's suitable.
Thanks. I mean, I think that's, that's important that, if it is stretching, particularly when it's of short-term nature like that, just that, if there are any issues, it comes back to Cabinet for further consideration. Anyone in their comments or questions? Okay, can we agree recommendations? And item 8 is the UK Government Shared Prosperity Fund. And David over there will give us a report. David.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for the Council's Shared Prosperity Fund investment plan prior to submission to UK Government on the 1st of September this year. The investment plan identifies a number of important projects which will be taken forward subject to funding being secured in East Ayrshire to support the strategic objectives. In terms of background, members will recall that on the 15th of June, Cabinet considered the Shared Prosperity Fund, which set out the other local funding allocation of £6.1 million to East Ayrshire as the lead authority with phasing of payments incrementally over each year. Cabinet agreed to seek an extension of the deadline for completing the investment plan to 1st of September, and the UK Government accepted that. Principally, the transitional funding will enable the Council's employability and business support programmes through the European Social Fund and European Regional Development Funds to be replaced by UK funding, covering a wider set of economic themes and outputs which comprise communities in place, supporting local businesses, people and skills, and Multiply, which is an adult numeracy programme. Since the June Cabinet, a process of internal and external engagement has taken place throughout the summer, including meetings with key stakeholders at local and regional level, recent engagement with MPs and MSPs, and discussion at key forums such as Employability Project Board. Officers from a range of services, including education, employability, financial inclusion, vibrant communities, regeneration, and business support, have considered the Shared Prosperity Fund criteria and nominated projects for inclusion against each of the 4 investment priorities. We've also aligned the investment plan with other funding streams, including the Ayrshire Growth Deal and other regional initiatives such as the Community Wealth Building Agenda and the work of the Local Employability Partnership. The extent of Pan-Ayrshire working taking place through the development of the Regional Economic Strategy and the selected projects will increase during the plan's 3-year lifespan, and Ayrshire Growth Deal projects, as they move into delivery, will align the Shared Prosperity Plan to that. As part of this process, colleagues within finance also undertook a review to establish any risks associated with the funding allocations, and in particular to map UK funding against existing European funding provided to East Ayrshire. The investment plan is a strategic document that sets out high-level ambitions and aligns with the relevant national priorities and policies, including the recently published Scottish Government's National Strategy for Economic Transformation, and where appropriate, it demonstrates the extent of contributions to net zero and nature recovery objectives. In summary, the plan includes funding for employment initiatives and skills development, new measures to help the most disadvantaged through the cost of living crisis, and projects to reduce inequalities between communities. It is taken into account and is aligned closely with the Council's new strategic plan. Paragraph 11 sets out 13 projects nominated across 4 investment theme priorities, with Appendix 1 setting out the funding allocation. Over the 3-year period, communities in place will receive £1.25 million. The first project is to support the infrastructure from SL33 and extend that out to the 3 other locations, including the BTTC building in Dalmellington and the creation of a new provision in Cumnock and Darvel. The second project looks to invest £310,000 in year 3 towards the provision of community wealth building and grant funding and resources to continue with the support for communities and businesses once the Ayrshire Growth Deal funding is exhausted. However, it should be noted that should Scottish Government, through the new proposed legislation for community wealth building, assign funding to the implementation of the legislation, then this funding may have to be reviewed and reassigned accordingly. The third project is to provide £110,000 towards funding to support relevant feasibility studies for community developments where it has been evidence that there is an area where communities struggle to secure funding. The fourth project is to provide an extension of the place-based investment fund to provide £500,000 in year 3 to increase the place-based investment allocation for that year. Funding will be used to support a range of community-based projects with a specific focus on implementation of measures to mitigate the climate emergency. Now, turning to supporting local businesses, that theme provides £652,000 allocated over the 3-year period. The first project looks to provide £130,000 specialist advice and support, including support for decarbonisation, climate adaptation and circular economy advice. The second project, Employment Growth, provides succession and capacity building with apprenticeships targeting unemployment and businesses sector gaps with £400,000 in years 1 and 3, with the use of LACER funding, which is COVID funding, to provide £100,000 in year 2. The Be Ready programme is a third project and currently funded by ERDF with the existing contract end date comprising of June 2023. This project will provide £122,000 to support businesses and develop their action plans for growth. Now, turning to the People and Skills theme, which will see an investment of £3.1 million over the 3-year period. The first project is a continuation of the Supported Employment Programme, which currently is funded by ESF, and £2.8 million is allocated over the 3-year periods for this, which coincides with the funding ending in December 2022. The main themes of this programme are employment support for the economically inactive, sector-specific programmes, closing the disability employment gap, future work skills and rural economy. The second project is Sustainable Employability, and £95,000 has been allocated for this project, and that aims to focus on the subgroups who typically may have a range of barriers. The third project is to provide £229,000 support in year 3 to offer further third sector employability support to a range of projects and programmes which we'll work with the third sector on. The last theme is Multiply, which supports an adult numeracy programme for people with no or low level maths skills and to enable them to return to work. The target audience for this programme will be adults who have not previously attained SCQF level 5 or higher maths qualification. This funding is ring-fenced. We'll see £1.05 million investment over the 3 years, delivering 2 key projects. First project will receive £430,000 over the 3 years to deliver Vibrant Communities Lifestyle and Inclusion Money MOT. The project will be endorsed by the SQA and target adults and families furthest from the labour market, where poverty and financial literacies are a barrier, and will deliver a Money MOT programme to incorporate money life skills and financial capabilities with a specific focus on numeracy. The second programme is the Financial Inclusion Pathway. The project aims to break down the barriers that can prevent individuals from taking up employment or gaining better lifestyles, providing expert assistance around the benefit system on saving money. Monitoring of the Shared Prosperity Fund will be carried out internally on a quarterly basis, and Cabinet will receive an annual report setting out the progress to each programme. Paragraphs 13 and 14 sets out the funding profiles per year and for each per year and per theme, and it should be noted that funding for 22-23 will be transferred to the Council on the UK Government's agreement of the investment plan, with payment for the years 2 and 3 made prior to the start of the financial year. In terms of paragraph 19 and implications for human resources, it should be noted that employability team delivering ESF programme are all on temporary contracts to coincide with the funding deadline for ESF, and as the employability delivery is transferred between ESF and the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, we'll make transitional arrangements to allow this to move over. Additionally, as performance management of employability outputs is transferred from national bodies such as the Scottish Government and SDS to the Council's lead authority. We'll be strengthening the resources to support and oversee the programme internally. I would also highlight, Chair, that the report aligns with the Council's net zero ambitions, and paragraph 2 sets out the recommendations and the need to submit an investment plan by the 1st of September, and including the need for delegated powers for flexibility in the finalised investment plan. Chair, I'm joined by Ian Burgoyne and Pamela Beck, and we're happy to answer any questions in the report.
Thanks, David. Okay, I'll just open up for any comments, questions. Drew?
Thanks, Chair. David, you mentioned the BTT centre there at Dunmellington. It's actually in the area centre, and this will be demolished for the new Dune campus. Can you give us a wee update of what's actually going on there?
Yeah, the facility is obviously, it sits with old IT equipment presently, and obviously it doesn't have a dedicated Wi-Fi connection. So we're looking to put infrastructure in there to have new laptops and to provide the facility in that temporary basis. Ultimately, the equipment, etc., will be then moved to the campus. But ideally, for the short period of time between now and the provision of the campus, we're looking to have a facility in Dunmellington that we can use and help support local employment.
That's great, David. Thanks very much.
Elaine?
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure we're all acutely aware of the climate change agenda and the cost of living crisis that we're facing. So I actually welcome the ambitions of the 13 projects in this paper. I think they'll go a long way to helping us weather that storm. Thank you.
I think we'd all absolutely endorse what you're saying there, Elaine. That's a good point. Anyone else? Okay, can we just go to recommendations in page 59 and agree paragraph 2? Can we agree them? Okay, and just before, maybe we'll have a 10-minute adjournment just to while we discuss interests. So reconvene 10 minutes. Okay.
I just ask IT colleagues to stop the recording, please.